Welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Kiriakou, and this is the podcast that aims to help people within the recruitment industry get 1% better after every single episode. We've had such a wide variety of different guests that come on the show that talk openly about their stories, about sharing value, tools, techniques, strategies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all within the recruitment space. And every single episode, we like to have as much fun as possible with open conversation back and forth. It's not scripted, it's uncensored. And as I mentioned, I like to have fun doing this podcast because I know that if you're going to tune into this, you want to feel like you're part of a conversation whilst also leveling up your game within the recruitment space. So if you like this podcast, please do us all a favour. Comment, like, subscribe, follow on all the platforms. It really helps drive engagement for the show. And that's enough from me. Let's get into this week's episode, and I hope you enjoy. Adam, thanks very much for joining us on the show today. We've got a wicked episode. Before I go into the introduction to you, I want to preface this to people. When did we first try and book this episode? Like 2 months ago?
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
It's been a little while. I was just joking with Adam before we clicked record that there's been a few times that I've had to push back because I've recently, our baby's eight and a bit weeks old now. And there's been times when you're like, mate, can we just push back a week? I'm like, yeah. Absolutely. I'm just so absolutely just tired as hell. But no, I'm buzzing to do this, and we've got some wicked topics to go through. Before we talk about what we're going to discuss on the episode, people that may or may not know who you are, what you do, just give us a bit of an intro, mate.
Yeah, no, firstly, thanks for having me on. Got there in the end. So my name's Adam Holt. I'm the owner of AT Talent. So we're a rec-to-rec business based in Manchester. We recruit in London, Manchester, and most recently America as well.
Wonderful. Cool. So, topics we'll discuss today. So, we're going to talk about authenticity, being yourself in recruitment, and how this ties into your business development approach, not putting clients on a pedestal. I've got my own little anecdotes and stories that I'll try and chuck in there as well. We are also going to talk about how recruiters can find the right business. Obviously, Adam doing rec to rec, he's got so much experience and value to offer the listeners and viewers about this. We're also going to talk a little bit about job hopping. So, when I got into recruitment in 2014, you see someone that's got 5 jobs in 5 years, there's just not a point unless you're just lead genning and CV stripping. But we'll talk about that and whether that's a reflection of the times, the market, etc., etc. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about recruitment culture. We spoke a little bit about this, about how 90% of recruiters can be dicks, and just be a nice person and you'll just stand out. And, that's a massive thing. And also a little bit of a conversation around the, overdoing KPIs versus absolutely no KPIs. And obviously where you've worked so many jobs in the recruitment industry, I remember when I first got into this industry and Rec to Recs would call me and say, Charles, we've got a job. They've got no KPIs. I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And then when I first worked in a job with KPIs that meant something, I was like, how the fuck does a business operate with no KPI? It's so odd. So we've got some wicked topics here. So let's just dive straight in then, Adam. So the first thing you wanted to talk about was the authenticity piece, being yourself in recruitment. Before I pass the microphone to you, I recently was in a studio recording content for a new business that I've set up with a couple of other trainers, and I kind of fluffed my lines a little bit on one of the videos talking about authenticity. And the reason why I say that, and this might make people laugh, is when I did my NLP qualification, one of the co-founders, we met him on Zoom. He's an American guy, fought in the Vietnam War, helped create NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the people in the cohort, Adam, said, Frank, how do I be my authentic self? And he just cracked up laughing and said, well, there's no such thing. You can't just be your authentic self. You have different authentic versions of yourself. If I'm in a bar with my mates, all expats, we're watching football, we're watching soccer, whatever, and a woman walks by, I'm going to be with my mates. Oh, yeah, she's quite hot. I wouldn't do that when I'm with my wife. Is that not authentic? And everyone was like, okay, but how do I find out what my real authentic self is? And he said, well, strip down naked and roll around in your own shit. Like deadpan. And I was like, what? I mean, because the only time you're really truly authentic is the day you're born and the day you die. I was like, okay, that's a really random thing. And I accidentally said that in one of the videos for our new business. So I have to redo that. So I just thought it'd be quite funny for people before we get started. But let me throw the microphone to you, mate. Tell us a little bit about what you think being authentic is in recruitment.
Yes, I suppose this has come from setting up my own business. I had the attitude straight away that I can be like unapologetically me, which isn't anything too outrageous to be fair, but like it just gave me the freedom to be able to work with who I wanted to work with. And look, as I've alluded to, that there are a lot of knobheads in recruitment, and some of the businesses that you think you may want to work with, it soon becomes apparent that the decision makers that you may have to be dealing with aren't necessarily people that you want to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, since doing my own thing, I've kind of been like, well, look, you know what, we're not a good fit. Like we're not
Mm,
going to work well together, and I would kind of look elsewhere. Um, so being authentic in recruitment, I just think is being yourself, and working with people that you do want to work with, that probably have um, similar thoughts about the world, about the
yeah,
industry to you
values
do,
and stuff.
similar values. Yeah, exactly. Um, and then I suppose it goes a little bit into LinkedIn as well. Like, I suppose I'm quite passionate about it because, as you know, you see a lot of shit on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I probably contribute to that at times because ultimately you do have to be consistent, and you
Hmm.
do have to, try and get engagement. However, there's a lot of like toxic positivity, and a lot of stuff you see about people moving jobs internally, whereby you just think you're full of shit. You can spin that as much as you want. Like
Hmm.
I don't buy it. Um, so I'm just quite passionate about be yourself, paint a true picture. We're all struggling at times. We
Hmm.
all have highs, we all have lows in recruitment. That's just the game. Why only talk about the highs? Why can we not just be honest about the things we find annoying, the struggles we have? Um, so yeah, I suppose that's where my passion
Mm.
about authenticity comes from.
Mm. I think that's a really valuable point, right? I must have talked about this on the podcast before that when I transitioned from contract recruitment, which was very fast paced, you're dealing with, nurses essentially, which you don't really have the commercial conversations with. Like it was very different to then dealing with sales directors, VPs of sales, CEOs of startups and corporations and whatnot. And one of the guys who I really respect to this day, one of the best recruiters I've ever worked with, said, you laugh too much on the phone. It's you don't sound very professional, all that type of chat. And I just thought to myself, but I'm quite like, I don't know, I'm an energetic guy and I like to make people on the other side of the phone giggle a little bit, laugh. I like to say things that stand out that make me not seem like every other recruiter. I don't want to be like that stuffy robotic. Okay, Adam, let's talk about your job. I want to, have a bit of fun with it because the job can be quite boring. And I remember the L&D consultant that we had at the time. She was great, but she was like, you need to slow down. You need to speak clearer. You laugh a lot. It sounds a bit frantic and whatnot. And granted, there's elements of that advice that I've taken on and I've slowed down a little bit over the years. But I just remember my first ever job I pulled, Adam, was off the back of a giggly voicemail. And the person called back and was like, I heard your voicemail and it was so giggly. And I was like, I had to give you a call. I was on the drive home and I thought, why not? And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
great. And everyone was looking, oh, here he is again. He's fucking laughing loads on the phone. And she just loved the energy. And I was like, huh, okay, maybe this is my style. Maybe it's being a little bit, cheeky and fun on the phone and making people go, oh, I can have a laugh with him. So I guess my question to you is, maybe for the both sides of the spectrum, for like a grad entry level TRC to a senior person that's maybe fallen into the trap of being quite robotic, like how does someone find their authentic self? How do they find what their natural aptitude, natural skill sets are, etc.?
yeah. I think it's just like I don't know if being yourself is too simple and too generic of a statement, but it's just like find some common ground, talk about it. Don't be afraid to be passionate about something that you care about and you're interested in. And I think that you'll end up finding that you build rapport a lot better.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I have quite an issue with like this professional.
mm,
I don't know the word, but like, what is professional
mm,
ultimately? Like, in recruitment, if you're generally quite a well liked person outside of work, well, if you're the same in work, you're going to do quite well because people will buy into you. You will build relationships, like that buzz phrase, build relationships. What recruitment's all about. Well, how do you do that? It's by getting
mm,
on with people and getting people to buy into you. So, um, yeah, I hate corporate jargon. I hate like people trying to be ultra professional because they're in work. Like, just be yourself. I saw something on LinkedIn once, and it said like, whether you're speaking to a builder, your missus, a CEO of a business you try to work into, ultimately everyone goes home, or a lot of people go home at the end of the day, stick their pajamas on and watch Netflix. Like, we're all the same. We're all just out here trying to make a living.
Mm.
So likelihood is they're going to have similar things, similar interests to you. So don't be afraid to try and uncover those things. And I think you'll find that you'll flourish and you'll create healthier, more long term relationships than you will do if you're just concentrating on being ultra professional and corporate, because people see through it, and
Yeah.
also it's not particularly engaging or enjoyable to work with.
Yeah, mate, I totally agree. And you've just reminded me of a recent academy I ran. They were all trainee recruiters. One person was working in the police for a few years before, but she's only 24. It's her first job in recruitment. And one of the guys, really smart guy, plays rugby. And you know what rugby players or rugby people are like. They like a drink, they love a bit of banter, whatnot. And after the first couple of role plays in the first week, it was very much like, yeah, I have a opportunity, and yeah, and I was like, stop, just pause. It's like, what is this like? I'm all for having a telephone voice because I've worked with people in North London that you don't ever want to speak to a candidate or client with that type of accent. But then there's like trying to be someone that you're not. And I was like, when you're in the pub with your mates after you've played a game of rugby, how do you speak? And he was like, oh, just like a lad, like just normal. And I was like, so why are you trying to be different on the phone, like or like in this role play? Like you're going to get on the phone. They're human beings. Like my analogy is a little bit more crass than you. One of my first ever clients said every single person in this room uses a toilet to go for a shit, and then patted me on the shoulder and went, "Go and do your pitch now." And I was like, "Oh shit," because I used to see everyone as VP, director,
Mm.
CEO, and I'm just a recruiter. And it's like, well, no, they're human fucking beings. So I think it's like that fine balance, isn't it, of being yourself, being able to have a bit of banter, but then also having the emotional intelligence to realize that if you are speaking to Joe Bloggs, who's the CEO of a giant business, and they are quite formal in their speech, and then you go, "You're right, geezer," then it's like, I think there's an element of just having a bit of emotional intelligence and knowing who you're speaking to at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you wouldn't speak to everyone like you would do your mates after 10 pints. I think there's a level of like decorum, and
Yeah,
you've got to keep some kind of boundaries. However, yeah, like drop just be yourself.
yeah.
Um, don't I won't name them. There's somebody within AT Talent that when they first started, every email was like it was written by ChatGPT, and I'm like, why are you talking like that? You wouldn't speak like that on the phone. Like, just be normal. So yeah, I guess that's where I stand on it. Really, just be
Mhm.
normal. Because another thing, when I'm on holiday and I look around, let's say I'm on the beach, and you've got like guys in the speedos running off rocks, like doing bombs into the water, and you've got the
Mm.
guys over there like sipping cans of cruise camp or whatever, and it's like that you don't know if they are like a builder or the CEO of like a multi-million-pound
Mm.
company. It just shows that everyone, if you strip the job title away from them, we're all quite similar.
Yeah, mate, and I totally agree. And what you said about the building rapport, finding that common ground, like I again utilizing that guy as an example, they work in AI intelligent automation, a lot of geeky types of candidates and clients. You're not going to have a lot in common with some of these people that just code in their bedroom all day, every day. But you just ask them about what they're passionate about. Lo and behold, they'll talk loads about it. And all you need to do as a recruiter is just mirror and ask more questions like, really? Okay, so when did you learn to code? That's really interesting. I have no idea about this. I'd love to learn more. They're going to want to tell you more about it because they're passionate. And lo and behold, you're building rapport and also you're being authentic. Because that's another thing as well. And I wonder if you agree with this. When I first got into recruitment, we got told never tell people you're a trainee, never tell people you've only been doing this a short amount of time. You got to act as if you are an expert in your market. And I always used to find that weird because like one of my values is honesty, right? And I hate liars, I hate lying. There is obviously an element of not saying I have no fucking clue about this market whatsoever, Mr. or Mrs. Client. So educate me. Obviously, there's a middle ground there. But what do you think about, especially for like the junior people that come in and they're afraid to almost say that they don't know everything yet, that they want to learn more, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's a tricky one that, and we're going through something similar at the minute because we've got a new starter, and it's like um, if they're going to be jumping on calls with associate directors, for
Mm,
example, and maybe asking them silly questions and stuff like that. It can be a difficult one, but I think my stance on it is it's definitely better to be honest than try and blag it.
Hmm.
So yeah, completely agree. As long as you've got something of value to give to them, which, no matter how new you are, you're still going to have roles that you're working on and accounts that you work with that they might be interested in. So it's just, yeah, having that, being authentic, being honest, and saying, look, I'm fairly new to it. Tell me about what you do. And then I can go away, speak to kind of my boss or whoever, and find out if you're going to be suitable for the opportunities that we've got, or I can get them on the call to maybe pitch it to you, because they'll know a bit more about it than I do at this stage, or they might be able to answer some of your questions better than I can. So yeah, I agree. I think it's important to be honest, and I think you will go a lot further being honest than trying to be blagging, because ultimately, like, I'm giving an example here of rec to rec. Like they will have started somewhere. They will have started as a trainee once upon a time. So
Yeah.
you'd like to think if they're a decent person, they will be empathetic and realize that, yeah, it does take a bit of time.
100%. I think something that really helped me, and something I say to founders and managers all the time, is that when you have someone new in their business, like prior to them starting, make sure there's a list of existing candidates on the database that have already got like a relationship with the business. So it's, bless you. So it's like,
Cheers, mate.
it's not a dead cold call, like headhunt call on like day one. Because when I moved from contract to perm and I got given a job to work, and they just said, here's a Boolean, look at the database. There's loads of people that have that know who we are. And one of the senior people just said, just let them know that you've done recruitment before, but you're new to this industry. And because they know us and they trust our brand, they'll help educate you. And it was the best time ever, because I think I worked that job for like 2 weeks, and I'd done my first deal on my second week of that job. I only got like a small little like finder's fee. It wasn't like commission or anything. But I used to just say to people like, look, we've all got to start from somewhere. I've come from healthcare. I'm now doing med tech. We've got a sales rep role in London, whatever it is. I need to know more about you, what you're looking for, and I'd love it if you can just educate me a little bit on this market. And every single person I spoke to was like, totally appreciate that. Look, I'm like, a lot of them were a lot older, but they were like, everyone's got to start from somewhere, mate. That's absolutely fine. Do your thing, and I'm more than happy to tell you about this market. And in every single one of those calls, all I was doing was just asking. We had a massive poster in the office that had the who, what, where, why, when, how, etc. So just ask questions that started with that. And every single call, I was just writing down key things I learned about that market. I didn't realize that these were the stakeholders they sold to. I didn't realize how this business operated, etc. And it was just amazing to just learn about the market, and just showing that transparency with people that I'm going to do a good job in terms of I know how to qualify the questions, but I don't want to sit here and say I'm a fucking expert. I want you to educate me. And lo and behold, after a few years, I was then confident enough to go out and speak to people and say, I have an expertise because I've been doing this for 2 years. I've done X amount of placements, if that makes any sense. Just a quick one from me, guys. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. But as you probably know, the way that I fund this podcast is through my coaching business. So just a little bit of information around that, because you or someone that you might know might find some value in this. But I work with recruitment agencies, recruitment businesses within a range of 1 to 100 heads that are looking to scale, grow, and ultimately want to upskill both founder level, recruiter level, and everything in between. And I offer a wide variety of different services, from one-to-one coaching, group coaching, training academies, business development training, creating company handbooks, and I'm looking to do a lot more webinars, and I'm looking to add as much value as I possibly can. But in order for me to keep doing this podcast, I need to make a living, I need to pay my mortgage, and I can only do that through my coaching business. Really difficult doing it by yourself, but I love doing it, and I add a lot of value to recruiters and recruitment businesses. So if that sounds like something that you'd potentially be interested in, if you're someone that's passionate about personal and professional development, my details are below in this podcast. That's enough from me. Let's get into the rest of this week's episode.
Right, first, I'm so passionate about open questions. Like in recruitment, you've got to become good at asking open questions. Like it's like ingrained in me now. Like I ask my missus and my mum open questions if they're ever having a go at me. But yeah, I think that comes back to there. You touched on, you've got the brand behind you. You've got a role to talk to them about. So there's two things straight away where you can add value to them. So as long as they know that, like I said, if they're a good person, they will be willing to talk to you about what they can provide. They'll break it down for you. And then, like I said, if you've missed anything, you can always get somebody a bit more senior to come and cover it off. And I'm sure that if they want a job and they're interested in this role that you've got to talk about, then they'll be willing to do that. look, granted, are always going to get some candidates who are dickheads, for want of a better word,
Hmm.
um, and will almost be like, take a bit of enjoyment in the fact that they know way more than you.
Yeah.
You're not fit to be talking to me, and there's always going to be people like that in the world, and there's not much you can do about it. If you work for yourself, you can just decide to move on from that candidate because you don't really want to help them.
100%.
Is it worth the revenue that they could potentially bring? But yeah, look, there always are going to be those people, but I'd like to think I've got a bit of faith in humanity that they're in a minority.
Yeah, 100%. I'll never forget 20. I want to say 2016. Yeah, because we were working in the King's Cross office. 2016, there was this candidate called Fabrizio, and called him about this job. And he looked at my LinkedIn profile, saw I was only at the business for a couple of months. Then he emailed me, CC'd my manager, and said, "Hey Charles, really appreciate your message. I'd rather work with Simon, your manager, as I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and it doesn't seem like you've been doing this for a while. Best regards." I remember seeing that at the time, thinking, "What a fucking see you next Tuesday." I was
Yeah,
like, what an
yeah,
arsehole, what an egotistical bastard. And I thought to myself, we've all got to start from somewhere. Where's it been like this? And my manager, Simon, just went, mate, not everyone's going to be super nice. It's fine. But like, you're good. One day you might place him. And lo and behold, in 2020, I had a job for him. And I
yeah.
mentioned it to him. I mentioned, like, we met up, we went for a coffee. It was one of those elbow fist bumps because
Oh
COVID,
yeah,
all
the
that weird stuff.
worst.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, all that kind of weird stuff. And I just mentioned it to him, like when we sat down, I was like, "Do you remember when you sent that email to my manager saying you didn't want to work with me?" And he went bright red and was like, "Mate, like I'm so sorry, but to be honest, it's just like I'm just so like my career is so important to me, and when I just saw someone like, look, great energy and whatnot, but I didn't have the trust element because I just didn't think you've been doing it for a while, so I wanted to work with your manager that had been there already 5 years. But look, we're here now, and you've got a great job, and I've got my interview in a couple of days, so who knows?" Geezer's the national sales director for that company now. He wrote me a wicked recommendation. So it's testament in recruitment, and I know this is something you're passionate about and we'll talk about, is that professional, polite persistency and that consistency. It's like even if you get someone that puts their arm up like that and says, "Don't want to work with you right now because you're too inexperienced," if you're good and you build that experience, who knows? You might be able to place that person. They might be a client in the future. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Look, like I said, there's always going to be people like that. I think even in that situation, whilst it's come full circle, like he still could have given you the time of day. And then it comes back to you, like if your questioning is good, you're asking open questions, you will quickly learn about the market, and then um, because candidates love speaking about themselves, right? And then yeah, anything that you weren't sure of, actually, you could have gone through your manager. So yeah, I think he still could have given you the time of day, but completely agree. This game, I'm so passionate about resilience.
Mm.
We face so many no's on a daily basis, way more no's than yeses, and you just got to move on to the next one. And candidates that do fob you off and potentially um, don't do it in the nicest way, like keep your dignity, keep your class, and
Mhm.
um, don't let it get you down. And like you say, it could come full circle. You
Mm.
got more chance of it coming full circle than if you see your ass and react badly.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, we spoke a little bit about the insides of a business and things like that. So when it comes to recruiters trying to find the right job, I've spoken to because I've had quite a few Rec Directs on the podcast, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about myself, about finding the right business, because I think a lot of recruiters had a guy called Fraser Graham, who's recently set up by himself on the podcast, and he said to me that a lot of the time your first job in recruitment is just like it's a lottery because you don't know what you don't know. You just want to get into recruitment, and sometimes you'll just take the first job that you get as a trainee, which put my hands up. I went for an apprenticeship scheme, and the first job I took, I was there for 4 5 months, done a couple of contract deals, hated pretty much every single day, hated the culture. I really didn't like the market. My manager I didn't like. Just everything about it. I was like, is this really the job of recruitment? This is not for me. And then I moved jobs, was there for 2 years, loved almost every moment of it. I won't talk about the bad parts, but they were the atypical toxic cowboy recruitment type stuff. And then I finally found my quote home, where I was at a company called Projectors for 6 years. And I remember when I moved there and started to get some success, I thought to myself, I fucking wish that this was my first job so that I didn't not waste, but I didn't have those 2 3 years prior of building up that desk and then having to move and do a completely different market type thing. But everything happens for a reason. And I got a load of experience before that, a load of fun stories and whatnot. But it's so difficult, right, to find the right business depending on who you are as a person, your authentic self and stuff. So I'd love to understand from your perspective, because you deal with recruiters at all levels, right? What do they need to look at when it is finding a new job or their first job in recruitment? How does someone go around to find the right business for them?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, that, particularly for trainees.
Mm,
I think it's easy when you've worked in recruitment, you know what you're kind of looking for. Um, Sounds like a bit of self-promotion, but like as a trainee, use a rec to rec and ask them about the culture.
I agree.
If they're decent and have a little, have morals, they will be quite honest about what it's like. Like we work with some agencies that, yeah, that I perhaps wouldn't want to work at myself. And we'll be quite open and transparent. Like, look, there's a possibility here to earn a lot of money, but if you want an agency where it's, drinks on a Thursday night, early finishes, ping pong table, and all that, this probably isn't the agency. Like, you will be expected to be in
Hmm.
early, leaving late,
Yeah.
and hammering the phones. Whilst on the other hand, there are those type of agencies. So where it's a lot more relaxed, no KPI type environments, which I know we'll get onto. But in answer to your question, yeah, I think use a rec to rec. Look, you're going to look at reviews. Chat GPT now is brilliant.
Mm,
You can put companies side by side and ask it to review them. But there's only so far you can go with that stuff, because reviews are a bit of a minefield. You can't always trust them. I know companies, that incentivize their employees to leave
yeah.
positive reviews and all that. So there's only so far you can go there. I think going and interviewing face to face is massive as well. I always recommend candidates to do that, because only when you've stepped inside an office environment and seen people at work and got a feel for the environment can you get a really true picture of what it's like. Um, I think the um, synergy, I think that's the right word, that you have
Hmm.
with the hiring manager is really important as well. Can you see yourself working for this person? I think spending an hour with someone on Teams and then face to face, you can start to get a read on what someone's like, and could you see yourself reporting into that person? Um, so there are a number of things I would look at really, and then obviously you've got to be quite intelligent with your questioning as well, to kind of maybe put them under a little bit of pressure, and unpack some things that perhaps they didn't want to um, share. And again, you can do that by doing
Mm.
your own research. You can have genuine curiosity that you might have thought of those questions yourself, and then obviously you rec to rec can kind of help you with what kind of line of questioning to go with as well.
Mm. Mate, I don't even think that's necessarily pure self-promotion. I think that I advise all my friends when they're looking for a new job and again, maybe this is just biased because I've been a recruiter for pretty much all my working life, right? The good recruiters are worth their weight in gold. Like they can help so much when it comes to helping you really understand what the right opportunities. If a good recruiter really gets to know you as a person and figures out, especially like at an entry level, like you're trying to get into the industry, and they really understand what your personality is like, what your natural aptitudes are, etc., they can help match you with not just a good business, but like what's going to be the right fit. And what you said as well, something that really stuck out to me was find a leader that you can look up to. Because if you join a business and you've got a manager that's not a real manager, they're not a real leader, there's someone that has a whip out that's just trying to whip people to do more hours and to do more work and more calls, but with no real reason behind that. They're throwing KPIs at you for KPI's sake, which is something we'll talk about shortly. That's going to be challenging. Also, working in a company where you are surrounded by great recruiters, because your manager will be, especially if it's a billing manager, they're not always going to be able to call coach and desk coach and help with absolutely everything. But if you've got a recruiter that's super successful working on a similar market or whatever by your side that you can listen into whilst you're on the phone as well and learn from, that for me is absolutely amazing. I personally think that since the pandemic happened, a lot of people trying to come into recruitment, I think they were kind of looking at recruitment of nice big salary, which historically recruiters have never really earned good salaries. It was mainly about commission. I want a pool table, ping pong table. I want to have we go out clubbing, we go out to the pub, and we do all that type of stuff. I think people have this weird perception on what a real good recruitment firm is. I've had people on the podcast, Adam, that they've outwardly just said, like, we're not like your typical recruitment business where we go out drinking. Most of us are sober, but we're a very high performing culture and we do different things. Like we go out and play paddle. We pay for people to have life coaches. We pay for people to go and do therapy, or we give them annual gym memberships and stuff. Like it's quite different. So I really think that if you're a trainee, especially think as we're on that topic, you really got to think about what it is you want from a career and then think about how a business actually aligns with your potential future goals, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 100%. I think you mentioned one there that I missed. Surround yourself with top performers. So if you
Mm.
go to a business and the top billers are billing 800 grand, a million, and then you go to a business where top biller's doing 200K, I personally would want to be at the business where the ceiling's a lot higher.
Hmm.
Um, Going back to your point as well about you being biased, you always advise your mates to use a recruiter.
Hmm.
I'm exactly the same. Maybe we're both just biased because we work in the industry, but it's a free service. Like you're going to be, they're doing they're working on your behalf to find you opportunities. You just need to sit there, you have a call with them, and then you just sit there and wait for them to present you with opportunities. And if you've never worked in recruitment before as well, how do you know where to find those opportunities? Like you don't. I think the only drawback is that you may be limited to businesses that are willing to pay recruitment fee.
Yeah.
But most businesses, I don't know the stats to be fair, but I'd say the majority of businesses are willing to pay for real good talent. So
Hmm.
I don't think it limits you too much from that point of view. It's just like, using a mortgage advisor. Like I would always use a mortgage advisor, and that's a free service. And when I've looked for jobs myself, I would always use a recruiter. So
Mm.
yeah, completely agree on those points. I can't remember the last point. Did you ask me something at the end?
I was just saying about I think I just talked a little bit about how people coming into the recruitment industry in the last 5 years maybe had a slightly different perspective on what a good company looks like in respects to company A has pool table, they've got beer taps, they've got this, that, and the other, whereas company B might not necessarily have that. But they've got the things you mentioned about with like, top performers. They might, they'll have regular, and again, this isn't even a plug, but when I go into recruitment businesses that are saying to me, we're struggling to attract good talent, and I always ask them, like, again, like, even if you don't work with me, what is your training strategy, your L&D strategy? And they're like, we don't really have anything like that. I was like, well, okay, as a trainee coming into a business and one company, yeah, they've got Ibiza and they've got this, that, and the other, but they have someone either external come in once a fortnight, once a week, once a month, or they've got an internal L&D function, or the leaders regularly do training, or they incentivize senior members of staff to run little workshops, and they sign you up for like webinars so that you're constantly improving your game. Do you not think that would help with attracting talent? And 9 times out of 10, Adam, I always get people go, shit, that's actually really good. We don't actually do any of that. And I'm like, well, if you want to be a high performing business, if we look at sport, right? I know you're massively into your cricket. You can see I'm massive into my combat sports. They all invest like heavily into performance coaches, trainers, and things like that to make sure that every single day they're leveling up, trying to get at least 1% better every single day. And mate, there are so many recruitment businesses out there that they don't even see the value in that. They just think that they should come in, make as many calls as possible, and then they'll get good. And granted, that is a strategy, sure, but imagine if you could do other things on top of learning from your mistakes. You're going to get people billing more, billing quicker, and they'll be way happier.
Yeah, I agree completely in terms of it. You want to go to a business where you're going to be supported, and it's important to really unpack what that's going to look like before making a decision.
Hmm.
So yeah, the better the training and support on offer, definitely the more of an attractive of a proposition that it should be. I just want to caveat that with I work with a lot of agencies who tell us when we're taking a job spec, "Oh, I've got an award winning training program." Um, I remember the first place I worked kind of advertised it as them having that an award winning training program. I sat through like 2 weeks of training, spin selling and the theory behind selling and this and that, and I was just like, what a load of shite this is. Like I learned more in one day with this external trainer coming in doing just contract specific recruitment, and I learned more from just being on the phone next to my boss, who was a top biller, than I did in like these 2 weeks of theory. So I think it's important to not just take it at face value. We've got this award-winning training program, or we've got an internal L&D person, whereas another person doesn't. It's like, no, what will my training and onboarding actually look like?
Yeah.
How will I be supported if I miss target? If I'm 5 months in and I'm behind target, what are you going to do to help me get to target? Um, so it's really getting into the nitty gritty of it and not just taking award-winning L&D program at face value.
Well, that's like everything in recruitment. Never take anything at face value. Speak to a client and go, "Why is this job coming live?" "Oh, we just need someone new." Okay, cool, that's fine. No, you dig and figure out, okay, why are you adding someone new to the business? What's that? What's the real reason behind that? And that's the mate. You make me laugh, right? Because when I first got into L&D, I had no fucking clue what L&D was. I'd never done an internal L&D job. We had one external L&D trainer that used to come in once a month and just used to sit by your side, help you with your emails and, coach you through your calls, help you feel a bit confident, like that type of stuff. And now when I go out and do training academies and things like that, they're always a bit conscious that they don't want consultants to sit in a room and do just a load of theory. And I said, okay, cool. What if I told you that they're on the phone speaking to people in your market on day 2 or day 3? And they always look at me and go, whoa, 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 that quickly. And I'm like, yeah. And on week 2, they'll speak to clients. They're like, whoa, what? They'll speak to clients on week 2, but they don't know the market yet. And I'm like, mate, the longer you leave that, the more anxiety they build up, the more they build up this client. They put that client on a pedestal and they go, oh shit, it's a client. No, it's a fucking human being. Also, they need to learn the theory when they're new, right? It's like with driving and stuff. Yes, you're doing it, but they have to tell you this is how the gearbox works, this is how this works. So you have to teach them theory, but most recruiters, I'll hazard a guess, probably 80, 90% of recruiters learn by doing and more so learn by their own mistakes. Hence, whenever I do training with people, I specifically delay the objection handling training because when I used to do it, I used to do objection handling on like day 2 before they get on the phones. But the reality is what I do now is I get them to learn how to structure a call. I go through how to qualify candidates, the whole open question piece. Then when they're on the phones for the entire there's one day on the first week where they're on the phones for pretty much all day after a recap in the morning. Then the next day we recap on how they got on their phone calls. Oh, Adam, this candidate didn't want to give me leads. This candidate was like, why the fuck do I need references for this job? I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to deal with it. Great. Now we actually have real life examples of where you didn't know how to overcome an objection. Here's the theory. Here's the role plays. Here's a bunch of people to call. Let's go out and speak to them on the phone. And guess what? I'll be by your side the entire time. And then I'll just sit by their side, tap into their phone calls, and do it with them. So there's a good, healthy balance between the theory and the training. Because that's where a lot of people go wrong, like you said, mate, where it's either all just on desk, which was me. I never had any formal training, and it just it took me a long time to like master my craft. But I would say I was one of the better ones. But then you get some people that just do pure theory, like my old business, the company they came from before, big corporate. They used to ship people to Newcastle for like 6 weeks. So you're doing theory for 6 weeks before speaking to someone.
Yeah.
That's fucking mental.
It's like you say, it builds up in your own head, doesn't it? And the more likely you are to put them on a pedestal. So I agree with getting them into it fairly quickly. Yeah, me personally, I like to learn as I go and learn by doing, but I suppose everyone's different.
Yeah, 100%. I'm at the moment, I'm reading a book called The Lean Startup. And because myself and a couple of other trainers have set up a new business. And I spoke to an investor and quite a bit of a juggernaut in the recruitment industry who's been on the show. And he recommended me to read the book. And I always said, I always got told when I set my coaching business up that it's not what, it's who. Like speak to people and they'll give you the advice rather than go out and read a load of self-help books and whatnot. But now it's a point where I'm doing something totally different, totally new. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Neither of us do. So it's like, okay, cool. So I've got to go and speak to people, learn from people that have set these types of businesses up, listen to this book when I'm doing a dog walk, and then do the things that I'm doing at the minute, and then learn from those mistakes. So it's a mixture of all those things. One thing I wanted to ask you before we move on a little bit to sort of job hopping. I'm just curious to know, as someone that's done rec to rec for a while, what sort of trends, if any, have you noticed in respects to what candidates or like, recruiters at any level look for? Because, I mentioned a second ago about, some people want the buzzing culture, they want the holidays, the incentives. I know there was a massive switch up in the market post-COVID that diversity and inclusion was really important. The work from home aspect was one of the most important. And I don't know who done it. There was like a survey or something that came out that suggested that a lot of Gen Z recruiters salary was like and commission was not the most important thing in comparison to like millennials and past generations. Like for me, when I got into recruitment, I wanted to work for a business that cared about me, that could help me professionally develop. But I come from a very not poor, but like we never had money. So I just wanted to earn as much money as I could, buy a house, all the rest of it. So just wondering like what trends you've noticed in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years in terms of what recruiters look for. So maybe if there's a business owner listening to this, they go, oh, those are some things maybe we could look at.
Yeah, it's strange because I've kind of seen it go full circle. Really, got
Mm,
into recruitment pre-COVID, set up the business just after COVID, and then went through like the 2023, start of 2024 kind of dip, and now it's a lot more normal. I think post COVID, especially 2022, the post COVID boom, people were looking for hybrid working. Candidates were in demand ultimately, so they were a
mm,
little bit more like, you've got to make me want to work for your business. How much work from home can you offer me? How much flex can you offer me?
mm,
Um, yeah, and all these kind of fluffy kind of things. Whereas now, um, recruiters or recruitment agencies are a little bit more um, the ones with the power. So it's more about ultimately like what can you bring to the table in terms of
mm,
what can the candidate bring to the table. So I think candidates now look they do want a bit of flexibility still. I
mm,
think if you're somebody who demands people to be 5 days in the office, for example, you are going to restrict your talent pool.
mm,
But candidates aren't asking for fully remote or, you
mm,
know, 3 days work from home anymore because it's just not that realistic in 2025 as we go into 2026. Um, so I think I find the better candidates are interested in earning potential.
mm,
What's the commission? What's the commission really? What are the average fees? What are the top billers doing? They're the questions that I find I get asked of the top performers. Those people who get too hung up on base salary, it instantly makes me question how ambitious they are, how much do they back their ability to
yeah.
bill. Look, I get it. Everyone needs a certain level of base salary. We wouldn't do
Mm,
commission only jobs. We've got bills to pay, etc. Like there are going to be some months that you don't earn commission, but the ambitious recruiters are driven by, like I say, um, markets with big average fees where the top billers are doing big numbers, where they can get a big slice of what they bill in terms of a competitive commission structure. Um, yeah, they're the main things. Look,
mm,
there's loads of other things that are going to make a business an attractive proposition in terms of location. Like,
mm,
city centre, you're always going to have a bigger talent pool of
mm,
people. Um, yeah, flexibility
mm.
is always going to help. But like I say, the better recruiters are focused on tend
Yeah.
to be the ones I've
Yeah.
listed.
I agree. As long as you're not like ringoing people on base. Like when I was in
Yeah,
recruitment, like my first job was 150 quid a week. It's like, I had to
yeah,
pay my mum £600 towards the council tax and the mortgage. I was left with nothing.
yeah,
And then they gave me a base salary of 16 grand. And I remember calling my mum, like, Mum, I'm rich. I want 16 grand a year. Looking
yeah,
back, it's like, fucking hell, that's actually so bad. Like, and then when I come into the city, I think I was on like my first salary was like 22 and a half. And I just used to think to myself, like, yeah, I'll back myself. I'm gonna earn the commission. But then the older I got, when I start like, you get a mortgage and now I've obviously got a kid, I've got a dog and all that type of stuff. Like if I was employed, I would need a decent salary just to live off. But my mindset with commission was that the commission was my savings. Like I used to live on my base,
yeah,
and my old manager always used to give me shit and go, "You're so fucking stingy." Like the only things I used to buy was like a new suit every other month because back then we used to always wear suits, and to be fair, I loved it. Not anymore; it's so uncomfortable.
mm,
But then all my money would just go into savings because I was ambitious. I wanted to buy a house and stuff, and a load of my other friends would buy your Gucci belts and the latest gadgets and stuff, and I'd always wear I'd have my new suits because that's what I would wear to my meetings. But I always used to think, well, I want to buy a house and I want to have a good credit score and I want to get a brand new car because I don't want to faff around with a second-hand one that's going to break and crash and whatnot. So I just used to save every bit of commission I used to save. And I think my biggest ever commission check, I was like, I should probably buy something other than a suit and other than put everything in my savings because, I've not bought myself anything for so long and I can't remember what I bought, but, I think, mate, you must have done this as well. When you're a young recruiter and you start earning good money, you do buy some rascal stuff when you're young, didn't you?
Mate, to be fair, so a couple of things there. I started on 19 grand. I think it was 2017, my
Mm.
first recruitment job. And I always say to my missus now, because she's always moaning about being skint, even though she's on a decent wage. I was like, I always still had money to put away into savings every month. But on the flip side of that, as soon as I used to rock up to work in my Fiat Punto that I'd got for my 21st birthday, I did my first deal, and within about 2 weeks, I had a Mercedes A class on lease, just because I was sick of pulling up next to all the directors and all the nice cars in the car park. So, yeah, that was my probably like flash moment. I'm not really into like Gucci belts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was more like, yeah, got a car straight away. So
Yeah.
can definitely empathize with people who do that. And look, it's part of it, isn't it? It's part of getting your first recruitment job, part of maturing as well.
Mm.
As you get older, naturally your priorities change, don't they? And what you
Mm.
want to spend your money on changes.
100%. There's a trainee, not trainee, he was a recruiter that joined my last firm, and I helped coach him and train him and mold him. And after I got made redundant from that job, he shortly after moved on from that business. And he called me and he was going through, I won't tell like the ins and outs and obviously name dropping, but he was going through a few personal issues and drinking too much, going out too much, all that type of carry on. And I said to him, like, look, this I'm gonna tell you something, but this will either make or break you. I think that you're a really talented recruiter, and I think you could do really well by yourself because his CV, with the next thing we'll talk about job hopping, right? His CV was just job hop, job hop, job hop, right? So I said, why don't you just do your own thing? But I'm just going to be very honest with you. It will be the hardest fucking thing that you do. And there are going to be moments you're going to question why the fuck has Charles told me to do this. But if you do what I've taught you to do and you back yourself, you'll be wildly successful and you'll have this like autonomy, your health issues, you'll be able to work wherever you want, whenever you want, etc. But it will just be really fucking hard. Long story short, he gave me a call last Thursday. I can't remember. He gave me a call last week. Geezer's built 150 grand this year. He's got a Mercedes Benz. He's just bought a Rolex. He's absolutely fucking smashing it. And I just had to have that conversation because he's a good few years younger than me. Of like, I love the fact that you got your Merc. I love the fact that you've just ordered yourself a Rolex. The Rolex is it can be quite a good investment, but I just want to just say maybe pump the brakes. Like you've earned some good money this year, make sure you put some fucking money away. And my fucking like, because I care so much about others, right? Sometimes more than myself. When he said to me, he was like, Charles, I've actually saved 50 grand. I've got a 50 grand buffer in my business savings account. I went, mate, I am fucking so over the moon for you. Just make sure that don't just keep that there. Just keep building that and think about when you want to reinvest or if you're going to hire and things like that. Because it's so easy that when you start earning good money in it, I bought a Cartier watch when I was 21. I was like, ooh, look at me. Like, you go out and buy a car and all this type of stuff. But a lot of recruiters, and you deal with a lot more than what I do, they start earning money and then they think that this is the lifestyle now. They have to be the one that buys everyone drinks at the bar. They have to be dripped out in Gucci or whatever it is. It's like enjoy your money and stuff like that, but just be a bit careful is all I'll say.
Yeah, that's it. And you're never that far away from a downturn in the market, and that's what drives me. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, like the fear of it all going tits up. So yeah, you've just got to be mindful and conscious of that. Like if you're on a bit of a high, keep going. Just be cautious, like you say. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's talk a little bit about the job hopping, right? Because as I mentioned at the start of the show, back when I was doing perm recruitment, especially because contract, it's not really much of a thing in, well, for what I used to do at least. Whenever I see a candidate, 10 years experience, they've had 7 jobs, massive red flag, huge. Then there was a massive shift in society in in the workforce. Gen Z entered the workforce, and there was this huge social media thing of, we heard about the quiet quitting, and we heard about my boss was toxic, so I just quit my job, and da 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 da. And it's like, okay, cool. I get that you don't want to work for businesses that, I've worked for businesses where directors would ask you to stand on the table and explain why you're a see you next Tuesday. I've worked for some real toxic places. And looking back, should I have quit? Maybe, but I just stuck through, earned my money, got my experience and stuff. But I feel like sometimes there are some people that they quit way too easily, or they're happy with being 70% a target and then really confused as to why they've been fired, all that type of stuff. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, because obviously you're actually looking at CVs and you're, helping consultants and recruitment businesses. Like, what is your thoughts on job hopping, especially nowadays? Is it a reflection of the times, the market, the latest generation? Like, tell me a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, so I've never had pelters like I had when I did a LinkedIn post about job hopping, right? But to most people, it's common sense, like you've just alluded to. Um, Someone's had 7 jobs or in 10 years. I can't remember if you said 10 jobs in
Yeah, yeah,
seven
yeah.
years, but either way, neither is great. Um, Common sense. You look at that CV and straight away you question, like, well, if they've done that so consistently, what's going to be any different at this next organization?
Hmm.
Um, that is how 99% of people who work in recruitment will react to a CV like that. Um, like I said, it's as simple as that, right? So it's a red flag straight away. You're going to be getting people questioning it straight away. I posted about that, and wow, got people going, it's not my fault. I've been made redundant. It's a sign of the economic times, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, my reply was, because my initial post was saying, like, if you've had 6 jobs in 6 years, it's a massive red flag. Like, you need to show a bit more resilience. It's like, oh, I just got absolutely hammered. Like, people were bringing up my career history, because when I was younger, just left uni, I did 2 seasons in Oz playing cricket. So they were bringing up like my temp jobs that I'd done when I was home for the summer, and like saying
Have
you're
a
a
day
fucking
off.
yeah, you're a fucking hypocrite. But everyone's saying like, oh, I can't help if I've been made redundant. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But 6 times in 6 years, to tell you one thing for free, no top biller has ever been made redundant 6 times in 6 years. Right. So in recruitment terms, it must be very rare that you would need to make a high performing recruiter redundant. Um, Certainly, more than once, because if you're a top biller, you're therefore making a lot of profit for that business. Why do you need to be made redundant? Like, keeping
Mm.
you is going to increase the chances of not having to make people redundant. So yeah, there's always going to be circumstances where people get let go from jobs and it's not their fault. Like, I completely get it,
Yeah.
and you might even get unlucky, and it might happen to you more than once. But like, I would consider job hopping like multiple short stints, and
Hmm.
I'm yet to hear a compelling, decent argument as to why that can be a case and be not that candidate's fault.
Mm. I've only ever had maybe two, three times of speaking to a candidate where I've looked at their profile 1 year, 6 months, 3 years, 1 year, and I've gone through their CV with them and thought like they've got good sales v targets, like they've got good like numbers, like what has happened? And then when they talk through and go, well, I worked at this business, and if you Google them, they got bought by so and so. So the director in America came in and just basically just chopped everyone in the UK and then built their own team. Okay, fair. Next company went into administration. I was one of the top performers. Products just had an issue. Company went into okay, cool. Next business, product I sold got taken away, so I was out of a job because didn't have a product to sell. Right, okay, fair enough. Next company, yeah, redundancy again due to acquisition merger. Okay, fair. That I'm like that you're just unlucky. That you're just unlucky. And as a recruiter, my job is to then articulate that to a client. And this is why I always say to people, you send that CV across, and even if you've written perfectly why they've looked to left and why they've left those roles or been made redundant, someone's just going to look at that CV, scan it for 10 seconds and say no. So I would always call someone and say, look, I'm going to send you a CV from the first look at it, you're probably going to think, oh my God, they've job hopped. Let me just tell you a little bit about why that's happened. But as I mentioned, in the hundreds of placements I made when I've done perm recruitment, only a handful of people were that unlucky. The ones that I used to have a bit of a gripe with was I left this company, Adam, because Charles was a bit of a wanker. Right, okay, cool. What about your next company? Oh yeah, the team was so toxic, so I left. Right, okay. Next company. Oh, I left them as well. Yeah, the manager, she was just not very supportive. She didn't understand. I was going through some health issues, and I just thought, nah, I can't work there anymore. I left. I'm like, okay. And going back to your point, past behavior is usually the best indicator for future behavior. So then you have to really think about, so I could place you in this job and then they might say some one little thing and then you're going to go, nope, don't like this anymore. I'm going to quit. And then what? And then my reputation goes down the drain. Like, how am I going to help you? you know?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the example you gave at the start, that must be less than 1% of instances
Yeah.
where a profile looks like that and they've genuinely been that unlucky. Nine times out of 10, um, you've got to have a look in the mirror. Even if you've been made redundant five times, six times, well, then maybe do a bit more due diligence in terms of the companies that you want to go and work for. Um, so yeah, I think it's quite common sense. I think 99% of hiring managers would have the same opinion that if they saw a profile looking like that, um, they're going to have alarm bells going off straight away.
Mm.
I don't even think it's particularly controversial, to be honest. I just think that LinkedIn in particular is just full of virtue signalers. So they'll see a
Oh,
post like that, and it's like, well, what about the people who've been made redundant just to make themselves look better by posting that? It's like I did one the other day, right? And I said, how as a recruiter can you have worked in recruitment for 3 years and have 200 connections? Like it's mind blowing.
yeah, I saw
And then
that.
it's just full of people going, 200 good connections is better than 10,000 shit
I
connections.
saw.
Well, obviously, yeah. But like, I'd like to think that of your 10,000 connections, they're not all going to be shit, are they? So you're not going to go far with 200 connections. Like, well, I know this one person who's got 200 connections and he built 500,000. I was like, right, well, there's probably not going to be many people who do that. Like, so again, it's just virtue signaling, try to show you, yeah, but what
Mm.
about this person? Oh, well done, mate. Like you're such a hero. Well done for
I
pointing that
saw
out.
the. I should have commented, and I don't know if I did, but yeah, I saw some of the comments just like it's called a phone, mate, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously, but like the thing I was going to comment was depending on your market, because when I recruited nurses, I set my LinkedIn profile up and stuff. My manager came over to my desk and was like, "What are you doing, mate?" And I was like, "I'm just doing like updating my LinkedIn profile." And he was like, "Why?" I was like, "Because that's like my brand online. This is before personal branding kind of exploded." And he went, "Mate, do you know how many nurses are on LinkedIn? Do you think they sit on a ward in between like dealing with patients scrolling LinkedIn? No." I was like, "Oh, well then how do I reach them?" He went, "It's called a phone, mate." I was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough." He's like, "We have a database. We've been going 15 years. Just call through the database, call through the job boards." Fair. Like the nurses, again, I don't know if it's changed now, but they weren't hanging out on LinkedIn. That's totally fine. But if you're a recruiter in a market where people do typically hang out on LinkedIn, I mentioned this to the other trainer I've gone into business with. Me as a trainer, as a coach, yes, I get some people following me from the podcast and from being on other ones' shows and my content. But when I was a recruiter and I put an advert up, so many people would try and connect with me because they wanted to apply to my job. So every single day I'd be getting hundreds of people trying to connect with me because essentially LinkedIn is a professional networking platform and a platform for you to find a job. So yeah, to your point, mate, like as a recruiter, you should be having loads of those connections. You should be building your brand and stuff. There was something I was going to mention to you a second ago when you said about like LinkedIn being virtue signaling, mate. I'd love to see if you have any other examples because I did a post earlier this week about a dodgy cold call that I received on Friday last week, and the amount of people like gunning for me saying cold calls don't work. If someone cold called me, I'd have zero respect. I'd never want to work with them ever again. Like maybe you just have to be controversial, even though that's not even controversial. But maybe you need to put something on there that you know is going to piss people off. But I sometimes post stuff that I think is just common sense on LinkedIn, and you just get people from all angles just fucking gunning for you, and you're like,
Yeah,
I'm baffed.
I said to the team because I've been posting like video shorts recently, and we invest a lot in getting like video content to
Yeah.
post, and they've not been doing particularly well. And I did the post I did about the LinkedIn connections was my second post that day. I was like, I need some engagement, and
Mm.
it's actually playing on my mind. I was adding a lot of data that day, and lo and behold, it did really well. But you have to say something that's going to get people talking at least. I don't even consider it that controversial, but a few people did disagree with it. But I think for every one person who disagrees and will pop up and comment and give you a bit of shit, I'm pretty confident there's probably 20, 30 recruitment hiring managers sitting there reading that completely agree. Like I sent someone to a client the other week. Like I sent a CV out, and his question straight away was, "Why has he only got 300 LinkedIn connections when he's worked in recruitment for 3 years?" I was like, "It's a very good point. I thought the same." So I know people, my client base, my target audience will agree with it for the most part, but you are always going to get the bigger your audience, you're always going to get people who disagree with you, and that's just life, isn't it? It's like celebrities, like you can't please everyone.
Mm.
And if you live life in such a way whereby you don't want people disagreeing with you or criticizing you, then you're never going to be able to put yourself out there, and you're going to struggle to really make a name for yourself. So as
Mm.
long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say that what you're putting out there you think is fair, and not too kind of toxic or ridiculous, then you can live with, or I certainly can live with, the odd
Mm.
person disagreeing with me and giving me a bit of shit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well, mate. That it tied into like our first topic of conversation about being authentic. Like if you believe wholeheartedly in something that isn't actually going to really upset people, like yeah, you'll get some people that comment and be like, rah, 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 but like you're not basically calling every ilk of person a horrible slur or whatever. Like you're just voicing your opinion about something. Then you'll just start to attract people that have similar beliefs, values, and ideas as you, and that's kind of how the cookie crumbles. Like I like to think of myself as a blend of the new school and the old school with recruitment because I grew up with hard desktop phones and PCs and fax machine in the office and calling sprints and like until you have a good quality conversation you can't sit down. Like I used to love those times, and I do posts about that now of like have we lost the sales culture in the recruitment industry, and people gun for me, oh mate, it's 2025 now, you can't take people's chairs away, you're like you can't do this type of stuff, and I'm like, I'm not telling everyone to do that. I'm just saying, like, if you've got a fucking issue with your sales culture because people are just doing clickety clickety on the keyboard and just afraid to pick up the phone, then like if you want a culture of people that are confident enough to pick up the phone, look, like you said, look yourself in the mirror and think about, why the fuck have I hired these people? What have I done to make this culture? But then I do that thing on LinkedIn, and am I right now? Because when you first start doing that and you get people fucking gunning for you and in your DMs, like, how dare you think that cold calling is acceptable? Now I'm just like, mate, that's my opinion. It's not gonna hurt. It doesn't hurt anyone. That's what I believe. If you don't believe in it, you don't have to work with me. You don't have to speak to me. You don't even need to fucking engage if you don't like it. I see posts on
Yeah,
LinkedIn all the time, and I'm like, well, that's fucking bullshit. I don't fucking comment. I don't have time.
it's like that Ricky Gervais clip. I don't know if you've seen it, where it's like going up to a billboard advertising guitar lessons, going, "I don't fucking want guitar lessons." It's like, it's just the way the world. And you asked me if I've got any other examples of it. I posted about, if you're new to recruitment, like, you need to be in the office or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
it was in reference to like working from home, but like, yeah, clearly about recruitment. And then it was just like, wow, I just got piled on by like the software developers who work from the mum's bedroom. Like, yeah, I'm disabled, I can't get to the office every day. It was like, well, one, you don't work in recruitment, and two, like, it might be difficult for you to exceed in recruitment, excel in recruitment, if that's the case. Like, but again, just virtue signaling, just wanting to make themselves look better for considering that. Yeah, for mentioning that point of view, as if like I'm this horrible person for suggesting that a trainee recruiter will be better off working in the office in the early days. So yeah, there's another
100%.
example.
100%, mate. I just, mate, imagine if you and I started recruitment now, right? But imagine we're both 20 years old again, and our first job is a fully remote job. Like,
But yeah, it'd
I'll
be
be
tough,
honest.
wouldn't it?
I'll be honest. Like, I don't think I would be half the recruiter I was if I was working fully remote. When I first ever worked fully remote during COVID, I nearly had a nervous breakdown. I literally had to put myself back on furlough. I couldn't do it. I just
Yeah,
could not do it. I was living at home with mum, fucking loads of stuff going on. I needed to be around people because you know what it's like, mate. Like, you have a bad call, it can fucking it's like a bit of poison that just gets dropped in a fish tank, and it just it overwhelms it, and you're just sat there, and then your colleague would just sit there and just tap you on the shoulder and be like, mate, every no is one step closer to a yes. Let's do it together. On to the next. And you're like, all right, cool, let's do one. You get onto the phone again, your colleague's having a great call, and then you have a great call, and you're like, mate, oh my God, just booked a meeting, and that vibe in the office, like, mate, it's yeah, I just think it'd be so much more difficult.
yeah, I agree. Like, you mentioned before, you're a bit of a mixture of new school and old school, and I'm the same. Like, when I first got into recruitment, and the environment that it was, it's probably similar to environments that you've alluded to. Not dead ruthless, but like, yeah, KPI heavy, and in the office and every day and long hours. And when I set up my own business, I kind of went to that modern day, no
Mm,
KPIs, flexibility type. And now, only as I've scaled the business and hired people, do I appreciate having had those experiences.
mm,
And the people who come into my business now, I'm a bit I sometimes wish they'd have had the experience that I had, and they would probably appreciate the environment that they've got now, but be much better recruiters for having had that initial taste of old school recruitment.
Yeah, mate, 100%. It's such a difficult thing as well. It's like, you know, you hear these stories of like hyper successful parents that are now millionaires and they grew up in poverty. And then they're like, I want my kids to go through some adversity, but I don't want them to have to go through what I've gone through. And then lo and behold, a lot of the rich kids end up with real bad mental health problems, bad addictions and stuff because they've been gifted everything on a plate. Like a lot of trainees now, they've been gifted like your source whales, your one ups, the best CRM in the world, a MacBook, and you know, like marketing people coming in to record videos and all that type of stuff. And they haven't had to go through some of the adversity of not having that type of stuff and just having a paper list of contacts and being told to fuck off 101 times in a day. Like, yeah, it's difficult. Look, last thing we'll talk about because I'm conscious of time, and I wanted to get your opinions on this is the recruitment culture. Obviously, you deal with a lot of different recruitment businesses and been in the industry for a while now, and seen the peaks and troughs and the changes in the markets and in the recruitment culture. And I just want to talk about that, get your opinions on it. And I know that we said we were talking about how unfortunately 90% of recruiters can be dicks, and you know, just being a nice person is such an easy way to differentiate yourself. And then obviously, I just wanted to finish up with the whole KPI conversation, which could be a whole episode. But yeah, I'll pass it over to you, mate. Like, talk us through like your opinions on the recruitment culture, maybe kind of where we are now, where it used to be, etc., etc.
Yeah, the culture, recruitment's an industry where you can come from not having any specific qualifications, if any qualifications, and very quickly be earning a significant amount of money, more than a lot of your peers, a lot of your family. And I think it just breeds a bit of arrogance. Um, and I don't think it needs to be that way. So that's what I'm quite passionate about changing. That, like, yes, you are absolutely smashing it in recruitment. Yes, you are very good at your job, but like, you've not cracked life. Like, just show a little bit of humility. Um, you don't have to come on podcasts and come on LinkedIn and preach about how you do things. Being, how you do things is the
The way.
absolute gospel and
Yeah.
the way. Yeah, like, it doesn't need to be like that. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So that's what I'm quite passionate about. Um, I think naturally, um, recruitment and naturally successful recruiters and salespeople are often quite confident, high energy,
Yeah.
competitive people, um, which probably can sometimes lead to people overstepping the mark. But yeah, it's just that arrogance of
Mm.
recruiters that bugs me a little bit. Like,
Mm.
um, obviously we're a rectorate business, so we message recruiters daily, and nothing makes my blood boil more in recruitment than getting arsey replies to in-mails from recruiters. It's like, you do our job, you know what we're getting at here.
Yeah.
Like, we're just trying to make a living. We're approaching you because you obviously look like someone we could play, so take it as a compliment. And one of the girls in my team just put in our group chat literally before I got on this call. Somebody replied to her going, she's obviously sent a nice an email, whatever it may be, like, this is a job I'm working on, would you be interested, whatever. And he just put, love, I've literally just left my current role for XYZ reason. And it's like, well, how the fuck was she meant to know that? Like, you've not updated your LinkedIn. So, like, instead of just replying being like that, can you not just be a little bit more polite and just be a decent person, say, look, sorry, I've just moved, I'm not looking to stay in recruitment, best of luck with your search. Like, how hard is that?
It's not hard.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm quite passionate about. Just
Mm.
like, just don't be a dick, basically.
Mm. Well, I think
Max, you must follow Max Learmonth, right, on
yeah, yeah, yeah,
LinkedIn. That's his little slogan, isn't it? Don't be a
yeah.
dick. And like, so simple but so true. And so many recruiters, unfortunately, don't live by that.
Mm. He was one of my early guests on the podcast, and we talked about why we think the recruitment industry is fucked, and it was a really good episode. But I think do you know what the point you raised? I think that kind of escapes a lot of people's minds as to why recruiters are perceived a certain way, and I think subconsciously I probably realized that, but I never really kind of put that together the way that you articulated it. Because if I think, when you first start to earn good commission, and my mum always used to be embarrassed to say that her son was a recruiter because, oh, is recruitment really a career? Is it a good job? Like, because people just think in base salary, right? And maybe you get an end of year bonus. Um, and then when I started to say like how much money I'm earning, the holidays that I'm getting paid, the progression, the training I'm getting, and she'd be like, "Oh, fucking hell, like you're 23 years old and you've bought a brand new car fully outright. That's almost unheard of. Like most of my friends are still looking to get onto the property ladder and things like that." But I think it's so spot on, mate, because a lot of the recruiters that get into the industry don't largely, at least, don't necessarily come from private school, well-off backgrounds. A lot of people come from, you know, not necessarily a great background, not a lot of money, and they come into recruitment because they know they can earn an insulting amount of money at a very young age. But then, like anything in any industry, it happens a lot with footballers, right? They're 21 years old, they're earning 200 grand a week. They just spunk all their money. They think they're the biggest things, the best thing since sliced bread, all the rest of it. It's such a valid point, mate. I've been out for drinks with recruiters, and they're sat there thinking, or saying, sorry, out loud, I probably earn more money than that cunt over there. And you're like, but money isn't like, and I don't know whether this is just with maturity, but like that mindset is fucking toxic, man. Like just because you earn money doesn't mean that you are here and there in other aspects of life. I see some people that earn really like a lot of money and they're miserable. They've got no personality. They're nasty people. And it's like, that doesn't make you better just because you're fucking billing £500,000 a year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it does come with maturity, but it all also comes from like the culture of recruitment, and that's the kind of banter that other people in the office probably have. And I think only by talking about it more, in podcasts like this, and it's kind of what the theme of our podcast is about as well, will that culture slightly shift, and hopefully one day, it's not an industry where that's like that. Whilst you don't want to lose that competitive edge, yeah,
Mm,
like you say, comments like that, you just sound like an absolute tit, don't you?
yeah.
But look, we've all been involved when we first got into recruitment in banter about who bills more and who makes more and all that
Mm.
kind of jazz. So yeah, I think maturity and obviously conversations like this, hopefully they can change that.
100%. Something that helped me and has helped other recruiters is if you think about the pillars in your life, right? You've got your money, finances, you've got business, career, you've got your relationships, family, friends, partner, you've got your health and fitness and your mindset. If you're billing really well and financially you're well off, and at work, your career, you're off like a rocket, you're doing really well, but you're burning your relationships with friends. You're not seeing friends. And granted, obviously, in recruitment, the hours and stuff, it's difficult to have a social life to some extent. But let's just say you're treating your partner really badly. You don't speak to your parents well at all. You're not doing anything to improve your mindset, to learn about things outside of the job. You're not taking care of your health and your fitness and stuff. Like if you can just work on those five pillars to just better yourself as an individual, then even when you start earning more money, like when I start to earn really good money, mate, I just started to go and reinvest it in myself. I started to pay for courses. I used to go on I used to go out and like spend my weekends in London doing NLP courses, leadership courses and stuff, because I knew that down the line that was going to really fast track my maturity and help me learn some skills outside of recruitment, because recruitment can teach you so much, but to an extent, if that makes sense. And then you can unfortunately fall into that trap of, well, if the more money I have, the better I am as a person. And I think sometimes that's where the toxicity levels can kind of rise, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a balance, isn't it? It's like business owners going on about how much money they've made and getting up at 4 a.m. and that hustle culture, like but at what cost? So
Mhm.
whilst there's a place for it, you don't get to where you want to get to in life if that is running a successful business, for example, without putting in the graft and having to make sacrifices. But it's all about balance, because there's no point being, what is it, the richest man in the graveyard and all that, and not having time to enjoy it until you're 60 and retired. So
Mm.
yeah, balance is everything, isn't it?
100%. Well, last thing I'll ask you before we wrap up, because we've been going for a little while here, but it's been a wicked conversation. Overdoing KPIs versus zero KPIs. So I'd love to hear from like a rec to rec perspective. You must deal with some businesses that boast about having no KPIs, and then on the contrary, I've worked with businesses that just whack KPIs for the sake of it. And if you've just done two deals and you've got a healthy pipeline and a good amount of consistent clients, but you haven't pulled enough leads this week, then you've got a disciplinary. It's like, what the hell are we doing? I think there's again, like you mentioned, balance. I think there's a balance, but I'd love to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, so I've actually been on this journey myself in terms of no KPIs and then having KPIs, and I've seen a lot of businesses go on a similar journey. So I think that there can be no negatives to having as much data at your disposal as possible, which effectively is what um, leads to KPIs.
Hmm.
So I think ultimately in a recruitment job, you live and die by your billings, right? It's a sales job. You'll have a billings target. If you hit that, KPIs don't need to be talked about unless you want to talk about how do we get to the next level. However, if you're bragging about having no KPIs, how do you manage underperformance, right? How do you improve performance without being able to refer back to that data? You're just going to be managing on a gut feeling ultimately, which I don't personally feel like is the best way to go. I feel like data driven decisions are always going to be better than gut feel decisions. So my take on KPIs is this: yes, manage on billings. If someone's hitting their billings target every month, don't be questioning them about how many CVs they've sent that month or how many regs they've done. But when people aren't hitting that target, you've got to be able to work back through it and understand why and where the shortfalls are and what they've got to focus on.
Mm.
And I like businesses that reverse engineer it and can show you that, like, based on 6 months of data, you've sent this many CVs, you've done this many regs, you've booked this many first interviews, and
Mm.
you've done this amount of billings. If you want to get your billings increased by 25%, well, guess what? Based on these ratios, you need to increase your regs to that, your CVs to that, your first interviews to that. So I think, yes, manage on revenue first and foremost, but I think the data is crucial in order to be able to, um, work out where your shortfalls are, and how you're going to address that.
100%. What you mentioned there as well about if someone's hitting target consistently, but they're not doing the CV send outs and stuff like that. Something my old sales director Liam used to do with me and my team was he could. I used to think he would be able to like see the future because he would be able to look through the data and say like by the number of interviews and new logos you've pulled, you're probably going to blank in December or whenever it is. And I'm like, how the fuck, how can you tell that? And he went, because these are the amount of jobs. You've just told me that these clients are hiring these positions and they're done for the year or whatever it is. You haven't been doing enough BD, right? And you don't have enough other interviews. So that once you finish all these jobs, you've hit target the last 3 months, you're going to hit target the next 3 months if these all go well. What then?
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to start like you need to start forecasting what's going to happen in the next 3 months. Like you need to start having conversations with businesses now. So we'll adjust your KPIs. So okay, cool. We don't need to do the 10 CVs, the 10 into whatever. Well, you're doing fine in that respect. But we're going to focus on this KPI of new client meetings with new businesses that might not be on the system or never worked with us before. Because I don't want you to be in a position where you've filled all your jobs and then you're like, fuck, I've then got to restart BD. And that is one of the key reasons why so many recruiters, you probably see this on people's CVs all the time, right? You know, massive month blank, massive month blank, massive couple of months blank, blank, because of that sort of pattern. So I think that's also an important thing for leaders to look at.
Yeah, and I think you've just given a really good example there of somebody who uses and manages KPIs very well. So it's about like educating your consultants on why you track certain
Thank you.
metrics and showing them the evidence. Um, if you're just hammering them, do more, do more, do more, but they don't know why, then that's going to cause a bit of resentment. So I think, yeah, educate your consultants on why you track certain things, but also, yeah, keep an eye on the top line, the billings. And if you've got a top performing recruiter who's whacking in consistent months, month after month, like if he has a lazy day on a Wednesday and he does very little, like look at the bigger picture. You can't manage it so granular that like a bad session is really scrutinized when you've got somebody who's doing what they need to do month in, month out.
Yeah, that absolutely nailed it on. Just to end on a funny anecdote. One of the girls that I've recently trained up in a training academy, she's 180, so just speaks to candidates. Her target, some people might hear this and go, "Oh my God, that's crazy." She's got to get 25 leads a week, right? It's 5 a day. She's only speaking to candidates, right? Largely, a lot of those candidates are open to work. They're interviewing elsewhere, right? So the last coaching session I had with her, I sat down and was trying to identify why she's not getting these leads. And it boiled down to two things. Firstly, she didn't understand why that was a KPI in the first place because she's not doing BD, right? So she doesn't see what the sales team are doing, right? So why are they setting me this target? I don't really get it because it's not there in front of her. That's a job that could come in a month to 6 months to a year, right? So it's out of sight, out of mind. Second thing was she didn't understand how to like she understood how to get a lead in terms of the questions to ask and stuff, but she didn't understand why that was a benefit for the candidate. When I asked the question, I was like, what's the benefit for the candidate? She was like, I have no fucking clue. I just think that it's their sensitive info and I feel really cheeky for asking it. So immediately then I'm like, well, there's a mindset shift that we need to work through, right? So basically, as soon as we understood why the lead was important, why that's actually been set, right? So that we don't have that resentment aspect, and then coach through the tactics and techniques on how to ask and in terms of why it's a benefit, she's left that meeting and gone, fuck, yeah, it's actually not rocket science. And also one key aspect was she was just working a sole job and that was it, and not dedicating any of her time during her day plan to specifically do lead gen. So she's speaking to these candidates that are very, very niche for this one particular role that some of them aren't actively looking, not getting leads. So it's just being able to pivot slightly and adjust it and educate consultants on why we're doing this. Because again, especially with the newer generation and even my generation, I can get anything I want right now. I can just order it on Amazon. I can get my food delivery tomorrow morning. I can get an Uber in 5 seconds. Like everything I can get right now. But in recruitment, that mindset will fucking kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that instant gratification piece, isn't it? Which is a sign of the times. I think that's a whole new episode as well. So
Yeah.
I won't go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I completely agree.
Right. So I like to finish every episode off with the same question, Adam. Following today's episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
So I've kind of stole this off the High Performance podcast, if anyone's watched that. But I think there's always things that happen in recruitment that aren't your fault and are out of your control. But what is your responsibility is to look at it and think what you could do different next time. And I think if you have that attitude to everything that happens to you in recruitment, whether it's a candidate dropping out of an interview or taking a counter offer or whatever it may be, if you can always look at yourself and think, what can I do differently next time that may have changed the result, I think you will have a lot of success in recruitment compared to if you're always looking to point the blame elsewhere.
Love that. I think that's a wicked answer, mate. Wicked answer to a wicked episode. Well, look, thank you very much for coming on. I really enjoyed this episode. In terms of who should reach out to you and how they can get in touch with you, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so recruiters, or people looking to break into the recruitment industry, but more so like experienced recruiters who are considering what's out there for them in the market at the minute or considering a move already, based in Manchester, London, or the USA, particularly New York. Yeah, reach out, and then obviously recruitment agencies, MDs, business owners, hiring managers. If you're looking to scale your teams in any of those areas, then we'll be more than happy to chat and see if there's something we can do.
Wonderful. Cool. All right, mate. I'll put your LinkedIn details at the bottom of this episode. And for people that have made it this far, thank you very much. Do the like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for watching this episode or listening to this episode, guys. Let me know, what was your biggest takeaway from this week's guest? What did you think about their answer to the 1% better in recruitment? I'm really keen to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, please drop us a like if you're on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm really, really keen to get some feedback from you all on what you think about the format of these episodes. Are there any other guests that you think we should have on the show? Are you someone that wants to be a guest on the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast? Because if so, you can just simply DM me on LinkedIn, you can drop me an email, all my details are below on these videos, and I'm always interested in having absolute legends come on the show that want to have real open conversation, that want to talk about things that could even be potentially controversial. We could debate certain things, but the whole point, as I mentioned at the start of the video, guys, is that my whole purpose with this show is to help the recruitment industry get 1% better after every episode. So make sure you're following, subscribing on all the different platforms, and I'll see you next week.